This man made 50 crores just from selling sandwiches in Bangalore. Meet Nicholas, a Frenchman who came to India to study business but ended up creating a 50 crore sandwich empire with his company called Paris Panini. Starting his journey from a food truck, today Nicholas owns 14 restaurants which are an absolute cult favorite for millennials in the city. In today's episode, Nicholas shares how he built his well-known brand of Paris Panini, his journey, and what it takes to build a big food business from India. So let's talk a lot about your childhood. So zoom out a lot. Tell us what was childhood like, where did you grow up, and where did the food bug come from?
So I come from a fairly modest family. My parents are teachers. My childhood, if I can summarize it, was mainly educational and sport. So I grew up in north of France, in a small city called Arras. I went to a public school there. I studied economics and mathematics. From there, I ended up in a business school doing international management and entrepreneurship. I started helping my mom cooking while I was very young. And this cooking, I think it's been part of my family, especially my mom, dad, brother. We've been cooking for each other, getting people home. So it's a moment where you share, where it's a very warm moment. And in and out, I feel that that's the same kind of feeling that you want to give when you run a restaurant.
Coming to India, want to understand what is that like?
So I came to India when I was 22 to, in fact, complete my master dissertation, my master study. I had to do this internship abroad.
Why Panini? Why start with Panini as a product?
I love bread. I love sandwiches. That's something I grew up on since my childhood. I wanted to get this experience that I have from home, this very, comfort, home feeling to India to back.
Super interesting. I think double clicking on it for a new founder watching this, for example, what should they have in mind when launching a new product? So what you said was very interesting is you figured out a gap where you understood that, hey, people are doing sandwiches. There are a lot of local shops. So there's extreme local vendors and brands that existed like Subway. But you understood, hey, there's a gap where I don't want to go extreme unhealthy. I don't want to do extreme massy, but there's a gap for high quality products.
For gourmet sandwiches. So that was the main focus. So when I started this concept of delivering the best gourmet sandwiches, I built up on this, serving the best sandwiches. Even whenever I introduce any new items or when any new items on the menu, if it's not the best, it can't be introduced.
Is the word Panini, have you seen that it limits your brand? So for example, like you said, do salads, you do fries, you dessert. So what is the right way to go at it for a new founder watching this? Should they have a hero product which should be on the name of the brand? Or should they think of a more broader name that encompasses everything that they offer?
Framing your brand name to your product is a great way to build up and probably a easier way to build a brand until and unless you have a lot to spend in marketing. Because when you start a brand, you will start your dining, you will start your Swiggy. If on Swiggy you're called a random name like Tablosito or a just random name, how would people associate to that? See, when it comes to branding, at least in the tagline, you should be able to put your product stand where you actually really focus on, because more and more people are looking for authentic experience. Let's say, if they're looking for Mexican food, it's not they would not want to experience it, that truffle. They would like it. But for I'm talking about an audience who's really concerned about the output, concerned about the meat. They want a really, truly wholesome kind of experience. They would focus on more authentic experience. And that's where I feel that, California Burrito, where they stand, or even Chai Day, Pizza Bakery, it needs to also reflect the roots, reflects the message, reflects your identity, the identity of your concept.
Oh, by the way, if you've been finding this conversation insightful, you'll love the free GrowthX newsletter. Every week, we send an edition covering deep insights behind 3 topical stories in the business world. For example, last week, we covered insights behind India's $130 billion wedding industry, the war between Ola and Yulu, and how India will have its own J store. Sign up for the free GrowthX newsletter with the link in the description. Alright, getting back to the episode. There's this one notion that the restaurant industry is brutal. Let's talk about the economics that are involved in the restaurant business. Let's take an outlet from Indranagar. Give us a sense of what do economics look like? What does unit economics look like? For example, it makes X a month. Where are all the costs? What does margin look like? And what can a new founder net expect when they are going the offline route?
Food cost will be ideally 25, but for us, we are more looking at 28%. Rent will be around 10% of turnover. The manpower would be around 15%. I would say admin and order expenses 10%. Marketing comes between 5 to 10%. Ideally, you would look at a 15% profit margin per unit, like when it goes well. But on an average, let's say you will be around between 10 to 12%.
Coming to revenue, like you said, you make 4 crores a month. Can you break that down for us?
Online is about 70%, 70 to even 72, 73% online. Before COVID, it was the opposite. We also have 8 outlets right now, 8 dining locations, and we have 7 cloud kitchen. So that's also why we would tend to have more online in our revenue than offline. And we've also realized that during COVID that we need to put as much attention in our delivery product as well as our offline offering. Now, if you ask me, any product that we plan to launch, if it's not delivery proof, delivery friendly, there's no point of adding to the menu because the most of the people will be reached out from online. So there's no point if you just add some items that will just die in the outlet because there's no export online.
Coming to this, right, which is profitability, because we are very interested in asking these questions because we literally teach our members revenue-led growth. And it's a massive shift that happened in 21-22, funding dried up. All these people who were spending a lot on paid ads, customer acquisition, user growth, had to quickly change their direction to revenue growth. And the deeper there is, actually, can your product crack monetization and make actual profits rather than just user growth, right? So coming on to profitability, out of all of your stores, what does profitability look like? If you can share numbers and how many stores are profitable today?
Today, all our stores are profitable. All our stores have always break even in terms of expenses and revenue. I mean, if you ask them how long does it take to break even a store in terms of investment, it takes on average 1.5 to 2 years.
What does your acquisition channel essentially look like? If you have to break down the entire acquisition segment for yourself, what percentage come from Swiggy, Zomato? How many come from socials, offline? What does acquisition look like for you?
Those are things it's very difficult to track. Like the Swiggy, I'll be able to know because 1 rupee will give me let's say 4 rupees. But in terms of conversion, when it comes to social media or when it comes to, even offline, you never know, you can't track. That's why we rely mostly on spending more money on Swiggy, Zomato ads or even our location because location, obviously, visibility converts, even though you can't track it. But the most trackable data will be from Swiggy.
So think if a founder is watching it or a 2B founder is watching it and they want to start a food brand and they're thinking, okay, which product should I go to market with? Tell me the kind of education that you needed to do or you still have to do to tell people, hey, this is what it is. Maybe you say it's a sandwich or something like that. So what is the kind of education that you have to do? And the second is, how should somebody think through their first product? And what kind of basic research should they do to at least get their first product out?
I felt that there was a gap in the market between sandwiches and the kind of premium sandwiches I wanted to bring. So I tried out a different kind of bread. What came out to be the star of the show was the panini, like a very soft bread in the inside with a crust on the outside. That's something that was getting attention with my friends, in my own circle, with what I was baking and what I would give people to experience. When I started, the bread kind of response was not as big as I would say it is now, or even the market in terms of sandwiches was not as developed. So I had to build on a kind of initial stage where you have Subway, where you have Super Sandwich, whatever, but make a better product. When you run a new product, it's very important that the founder gets into talking to its audience and understand also the market. But at the same time, what was very important was, and what is still important, is how dynamic is our concept. It's a product that fits really well for online as well as offline when it comes to, let's say, have a get-together at a restaurant, but also have a get-together at your house where we can do live catering, where you can directly set up a small kind of counter at somebody's house and cater to them and do a different kind of get-together, and as well as even participate to events.
So how do you test out a food concept for a new founder? How do you at least get some proof that hey, what I'm putting out makes sense, but I have enough evidence that I can build a business out of it?
There are still a lot of people who calls me and want to start food trucks because they find it to be the way to test. I tell them, see, that's a good thought, but where will you park your truck? They are quite stuck because they don't necessarily know. They just assume that they can park, but they don't have evidence. So I also tell them that, see, I understand the food truck could be a great way to start with a minimum capex, but at the same time, it doesn't refrain you from doing pop-ups, from participating at events where you take up a small stall, where you have let's say a good branding, a good face to the customers. If your product is good, people will come back to, and that will give you enough traction and enough confidence to build on. So when I started the food truck, I was looking for a proof of concept. Once I got this proof of concept, so it was not just the food truck, but it was also Swiggy and Zomato. So we were getting a good amount of order on daily basis. I remember talking with Swiggy at that time, and we had people who would returning customer rate was about 60%. So which was for them the highest rate for the area.
So would you recommend that to a new founder that, hey, just get started, try to get yourself listed on Swiggy and Zomato to just see if that's getting you somewhere?
No, I would not suggest. Why? Because Swiggy, Zomato, as much as it gives you insight about your returning customer and all of that, it doesn't give you the true feedback of what you can get in a dining environment. So that's why, again, I would say start something, doing pop-ups, start probably even approaching tech park or even co-working space, because co-working space are always, there are thousands of people walking there, but they don't necessarily have good options to eat. So they are always looking at different product, different cuisine, different things to experience. Talk to them, get a spot there, give them go to them, surprise them, give them a taste of your food. So at the end, start small, have a very strong USP, but keep in mind always your value and your concept, and you build on this.
Tell me everything that you did to crack pricing, because something that we even teach in the final weeks of the learning experience, monetization. We teach a framework to how you price your products. But tell me, what did that look for you? How do you generally experiment with pricing? How did you understand, hey, this is where we fit perfectly? And yeah, what did that look like for you?
Since our product is premium and we use premium ingredients, the kind of pricing we had was also slightly up compared to any other sandwiches brand. Now, how we were able to tackle the pricing issue was to give half panini, half portion, let's say even be very dynamic in terms of your items and how you put them in front of the customer. If you are flexible in terms of offering, that's where you're able to cater to a broader audience. We've introduced that the combo option to people that gives them a way to pick any additional item at a very minimal cost.
Have you thought through, and is it like a conscious call or something that you have internally in the team, is building a brand? How do you build a food brand? What calls as a brand do you take? This is how we'll be established as a brand. This is what we'll do for reach and more people to know us. And this is how we'll essentially build a cult following around us.
So I would say to build a very strong, unique concept is root of any successful chain of restaurants. So very unique, very like with a strong USP, and communicate clearly to your customer this concept. I communicated clearly that I am building a chain of cafe, like fast casual restaurants that are French inspired. I use local ingredients, fresh ingredients, but I French style them. So, it's a very clear vision on what you do to set up the strong base and then be consistent in what you do. Because consistency for me, probably the most challenging thing over the years, especially when you start scaling, because the way you operate with 1 and 10 is completely different. That's why it's very important for us that we set very strong SOPs and processes along the way for kitchen as well as service. And make sure to replicate them and make the message very clear for our staff to communicate to the customer through their experience. So to have a very consistent experience at the end.
Done. I think, Nicholas, final question. It's been 10 years, more than 10 years of you building in this space. If you have to just reflect honestly and reflect about the time you spent building in the food space, your failures, your learnings from all these years, how do you reflect? What are some thoughts that come to mind? And finally, we'll also, if you have advice for founders who want to build in this space or are already building in this space, what would you tell them?
Don't overthink too much. Just start with what you have and probably maximize the efficiency of what you have right now and focus on building one very strong product and concept that people would see value in. And there will be time where you have to take crucial decision, but don't forget about the vision that you have. So keep in mind your values, keep in mind your concept, keep in mind your identity, and stick to that. Be consistent. You might have ups and downs. To be honest, I almost went back to France at some point in 2019. I also decided, okay, it's been 2 years now. 2 years looking for investment. Maybe it's not the right thing and I have to go back to France. And I was like, okay, I'll give this 1 more year. I'll see if, because I believe in the product. And that's one thing that anytime, any day, I always believed in the product and the potential that it had. And if you stand strong on your position and work on concept, improving the product, improving the experience, listen to your customers, I think those are the recipes for success, or at least to put you in the path of success in restaurant industry here in Bangalore.